This is the You Can Learn Chinese podcast. For everyone who's trying to learn Chinese or reaching for the next level, you came to the right place. I am your host, Jared Turner.
And if I had a nickel for every time I didn't know what was going on, I'd be like, hey, where the heck did all these nickels come from? My co-host is John Passon. And in high school, he broke up with his girlfriend who had a lazy eye because she was seeing someone on the side. Let's get to it. Hey guys, this is Jared Turner joining you here from Utah in the United States.
Hi, everybody. My name is John Pasden. I am in Shanghai, China. How's it going?
So you guys have to forgive me a little bit. I'm just getting over a cold here, so my voice is a little, got limits.
All right. You sound great as ever, Jared.
Oh, well, shucks. Thanks, John.
Let's not record any hacking or coughing, but I think we'll make it.
No promises.
All right. So today we wanted to do something slightly different. I feel like Jared and I have so many stories about life in China, learning Chinese, being able to meet new people, have new relationships, open up new opportunities. And we don't always tell that many stories, or we just do as a little side note. But I thought, hey, why not make that one of the main things we talk about? Jared loves to tell stories. I can be coaxed into a story or two. Why not do that?
Yeah, I feel like it's pulling teeth sometimes to get you to tell a story, John.
It's true. I'm not always one to just talk about all my own experiences or my thoughts, but it's our podcast topic, so I think I'm going to have to do it today.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, I would say, John, you probably in the end have more stories than I do. Yeah, I mean, heck, you've been in there, China. How many years now?
So it will be 26 years this year because it's 2026.
That's crazy. You got a life sentence there in Shanghai.
I'm enjoying it. Yeah, so even though I'm relatively introverted, especially compared to Jared, I do have a lot of experiences meeting different kinds of people in China. And I think about these relationships a lot and, the role that Chinese plays or English or whatever. I've blogged about that before too. But I think I have enough material to work with to tell a couple different kinds of stories about people I've met and the relationships that have been created from that.
That sounds really cool. And John, I got to say, I consider you a high-functioning introvert.
Yeah, I'm not all the way introvert, but maybe 75%. I don't know.
Once an introvert, always an introvert, but that's okay. It's a sliding scale, right?
All right. So, Jared, let me tell a story about this person I met. It's a little embarrassing because it's the cliche meeting my wife, but it is a little bit of a special story, I think, because when I was learning Chinese in Hangzhou, I was meeting lots of different people. And I had all these weird experiences where some people only wanted to speak to me in English, or some of them were cool speaking to me in Chinese, but then they just kept wanting to practice English. I don't know. I never felt like I was really just meeting people. And I was in China, so I wanted to be learning Chinese as much as possible. Didn't mind a little bit of English, but I didn't want it to be the focus, And it wasn't until I met my future wife that I met someone who was genuinely interesting, had no interest in learning English, and was also hilarious. So I think that was definitely the best friend that I've met in Chinese. Yeah, my best friend, my wife.
And she is hilarious. I got to give that to her. She's pretty funny.
Yeah, to this day, she's not that interested in English.
But her English is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's not bad, but she likes to just turn off. I'll be talking with my kids at the dinner table, and we'll be speaking in English, and she won't be listening at all. Then she'll ask a question. It's we were just talking about that. But, it's cool. But yeah, obviously, meeting your future spouse, getting to know them in a foreign language, learning so many other things from them about Chinese culture and just life in general, that has an impact.
John, I kind of think a little bit how I started out learning Chinese. I mean, I was literally I moved to China and I'm kind of dropped in the middle of everything. I think about one of my best friendships I have, and it's an American guy. It's a guy named Vaughn Wilhelm. He's like a brother to me. My kids all call him Uncle Vaughn, But a bit of this was I can make this a relationship forged in the fires of learning Chinese. Now, Vaughn, he already spoke Chinese. He'd lived in China, I think a combined 8 or 9 years at that point. And he spoke Chinese very well. But he was like my personal tutor, if you will. And not just that, but like a life coach almost. He talked me around, the different places. Oh, he showed me this noodle shop. He helped me get started, really, not just on learning Chinese, but learning how to live in China. And for me, that was such a big deal. And I'm always coming home with these, was out, doing this or that. And I come back with this question like, oh, well, what did this mean? Well, I heard this. What is this? What's that? And it was always not just patient, but super helpful and helped me get through a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, everybody needs a friend like that, especially if you're dropped in a foreign country like China, almost by yourself, if you will, and someone to kind of help you figure everything out.
Yeah, I can imagine that would have been nice. I didn't really have that, so I kind of had to just figure it out myself, but sounds cool. But are you saying that like your relationship with him was because of Chinese and being in China?
Yeah, absolutely. It was only like a couple days before I left for China that I got in touch with him through a common friend saying, oh, this guy, he's looking for, like some roommates or something to stay with him. And he has a family. I have a family, but I was going out by myself, and his family had gone back to the States for a period of time. And so he just was looking for some people to, maybe bunk up there at his place. So it worked out really well. But that's a story about kind of, getting started in Chinese. But, I think about many of the different relationships and the doors that have kind of opened because of being able to speak Chinese. And I think back one of our first ones is our family early on when we were living in China. So we were there about a year. We hired an ayi to come help us in our house. And so anyone who's not familiar with this, an ayi, it is, John, how would you define it?
Housekeeper, domestic helper, something like that. Nanny.
There you go. She was fantastic. Her name was Jiang Aishi, which was Jiang and then love time, which is kind of an interesting name. Everyone's always said that when they've heard her name. It is an interesting Chinese name. But she was fantastic. And to this day, we still keep in touch with her. We'll send videos of the kids because she was there for the birth of our third child in China.
Wow.
And she's just been so special to us. No, she was there for the birth of our fourth child as well, now that I think about it. We had 2 children in China, and she was there for both of their births. And she's like our beloved person that we just, I don't know, she was special. There was a point where she ended up taking a different job, but there's been nobody like her that we ever had since. And she's still very special to us. And when I've been back in Shanghai, I've been able to see her and send videos of the kids here and pictures here and there and keep in touch with her.
Well, yeah, that reminds me of my ayi, Xiao Yu. I think you've met her, Jared. She was with us for like 8 years. But it's a crazy situation because a lot of, ayis, they come to Shanghai from other cities. And oftentimes they have families back home. And they're trying to make, money because pay is higher in Shanghai and send it home. But the crazy thing is she had 3 kids back in Anhui, and she was working in Shanghai and sending money home and then going to see them on holidays. And so she was spending her time with my kids instead of her own kids. And that makes me feel bad, but she was happy to do it, and she felt like it was the best thing for her kids. And she was so great, and my kids love her. She was like a member of my family. Like my wife, obviously she's Chinese, but when she would introduce Xiao Yu to other people like that come to visit, she never wanted to say she's our ayi because she felt more like a family member. And we had a lot of conversations with her about different things, and she was pretty forthcoming. She was also kind of interesting because when you think of ayi, you think of someone who's older than you, like your mother's generation. But in this case, she was younger than us. And so it's kind of cool to hear her perspective, someone a little bit younger than us. She was educated, like she could help my kids with their homework and stuff. And just hearing her perspective coming from, rural Anhui was quite interesting.
Sounds like a special relationship there. My mind kind of goes forward as well. A lot of the different things we did in China. One of the things which I've mentioned before is we opened a bakery in Shanghai. We opened China's first, best, and only cinnamon roll bakery. Cinnaswirl was the name of it. And funny enough, it's still there. I don't know if you've been past that place, John, in the last little while, but
on the
still
same road?
exists. Same road, same place.
No, because I don't really have much reason to go over there. My office used to be over there, but it's not there anymore.
Yeah. So it's not far from the Jing'an Temple.
Right.
If anybody's in Shanghai. It's changed a bit. It's kind of more like a bagel / cookie / cinnamon roll place now, but it's still there. Anyways, John, I think about the many different employees that we had there, store managers. And frankly, because of the business, we had a lot of expat customers. So pretty much all the employees spoke at least some English. I mean, it wasn't always, the best English, of course, but definitely sufficient. And I had some employees that spoke English very, very well. But I think about really the kind of a lot of these friendships that I developed with these guys. One comes to mind, John. This is kind of a sad, but I think kind of a happy story in the end. So this guy, he went by the name of Jason, and I really liked him. He was just very personable, very nice, just a really good guy, and got to know him kind of well about his kind of family situation. He had some interesting dynamics going in, with his parents and grandparents, of course. But he'd been working for me for about a year and a half. And he came to me and he said, "Boss, I feel terrible." I'm like, "Okay, well, Jason, let's talk about this. What's going on?" He's like, "I stole money from you guys."
What?
And I'm like, "Whoa, yeah." He's like, "I've stolen money." He stole 200 RMB from the till.
That's not very much.
No, it's not very much. And he said he had done it twice or something over the last month. And his conscience had got so bad. He's like, "Let me work for free for you for the next month, and then I'll quit." His money situation wasn't great. We paid okay, but I mean, it's still not a great salary, right?
But wait, hold on. When he admitted to stealing, did he return the money at the same time or he didn't have it?
He could have returned the money. I was kind of like, "Hey, just pay the money back." And for the sake of just being the boss, and other employees kind of knew about it too, I had to let him go. We worked out something where he just worked like another week or so, and then he only took like maybe half wages. I was going to pay him his money, and he just wanted to just I'll take out that money, but he was just so like insistent about making some sort of restitution about this,
Wow.
And so I said, "Okay," we made out some deal, and he essentially kind of had like a penalty, if you will, like it cost him like about 1,000 RMB, right? But I said, "I'll help you get another job." And since I know a lot of other guys in the business, I was able to refer him out. And, within a week, he had another job somewhere else. I'm like, he's a good guy. He's an honest guy, I just always remember that story because that's rare, right? Somebody comes to you and is like, "Oh, I stole money from you." And he's like, anyway, I just remember that guy. He's such a great guy. And we've still been in touch here and there. And he's moved back to Chengdu, where he's from. And he's opened a restaurant there, and he's doing well.
All right, well, let me ask you about this because this is something that I've had the experience of too, which is being a boss in China. So you have employees and you're talking about relationships with your employees. But I mean, how can you call that a friendship if you're their boss? I mean, the power dynamic there makes friendship kind of difficult. Not to mention the fact that you're a foreigner and they're Chinese. It's just like weird on so many levels. Like you don't feel like those are really friendships, do you?
That's a great point. I think it really matters, I think, who you are, right? I guess on my end, I'm just kind of the guy always concerned about the people, about their stories, about their background, and I feel like I get to actually know them and care about them. And I think perhaps on that level, not every employee I've ever had has been like a really good friend, you would say, but I would say that I have a few.
You could be kindly Uncle Jared.
Maybe that's how they might think of me, but...
Okay, so let me talk a little bit about my situation because, I started All Set Learning in 2010 and I hired mostly Chinese teachers as employees. We never hired any foreigners, but we did have some interns that were foreigners. And so for me, it was kind of a dream come true because, it was hard to build a business from scratch, but learning Chinese is something I've always enjoyed, and being able to have teachers as my employees and do stuff together. And then I can ask them any questions about learning Chinese at any time. And then we can work together to create new materials. Yeah, I loved it. And so one of the things that I really enjoyed about it, I've had many different great employees over the years, but I've really enjoyed being able to create a culture because as the boss who speaks Chinese well, but not perfectly, I make mistakes.
You're better than not just the most, but the most of the most. Right?
There are people that speak better Chinese than me, but my Chinese is pretty decent. But, I make mistakes, especially when I'm working with people all day, every day. I'm going to be making mistakes. And so their Chinese teachers, when they teach people, one of the things they need to do is correct mistakes, but I'm their boss. Like, do I want them to correct my mistakes? And so I wanted to create this culture of like, yeah, I'm your boss, but I'm a foreigner and I'm always learning. Like, I'm never going to stop learning Chinese. It's going to be the rest of my life. And so, don't be a jerk about it, but I do want to know when I'm making mistakes. And the mistakes I make just kind of gets recycled back into my knowledge about learning Chinese and obstacles that you face while learning at certain levels, right? So I've had a lot of really great employees over the years, and it's been great, like being always able to talk about this learner journey, them from the perspective of teachers and then me from the perspective of a learner myself, and then also being able to relate to our clients learning Chinese in different ways.
That's pretty cool, John. I appreciate that, And I think a little bit as well, like my business nowadays, where I have my own company and I help people get things, like manufactured and made in China. And so I work with a lot of different suppliers and some factories in China these days. And there's this one company I work with, and there's this lady, Huang Xiaojie. So we've been working together on some of the stuff they make for a variety of clients that I have. And I think this is something I've noticed just about being able to speak Chinese and understanding the situations in China and how things are going, that we've never actually met in person, but she knows that I get her and I understand, I guess, the Chinese culture. So I'm like always respectful of the holidays, right? A holiday comes up and I'm kind of like, oh, hey, I know we got the Chinese New Year coming up. What's your guys' cutoff time? And she, oh, yeah, this is the time. Or the Dragon Boat Festival was this weekend. So I'm like, and I had messaged her and she replied, I'm like, oh, wait a second. I'm sorry. I realize it's the festival. Spend time with your family, don't worry about that. We'll get this next week. And I've just noticed like some of these little touches seems like be a big deal to her. And she doesn't speak any English. So we're always communicating in Chinese.
How are you communicating with her? Like in WeChat, texts?
Yeah, all the time. WeChat.
Voice messages or texts?
It's usually text. Once in a while, we'll have a voice message. But it's kind of funny because it's all text. But I feel like I actually know this lady pretty well. And, at least her temperament, like, what she's like. She's incredibly focused on details, which is a very important part of, just what we do. But it's kind of funny. We kind of have this kind of playful relationship between each other, too, and how we message each other back and forth. And sometimes, different things or, a client changed this or whatever. It's kind of funny.
Cool. Actually, there is another friend that I wanted to mention. When you mentioned your story about Vaughn, who helped you learn Chinese and get settled in China, it reminded me of my friend Zhang Pei. Back when I did my master's in applied linguistics in Shanghai, I was in this program that was all in Chinese. So my classmates were Chinese, and most of them were, a bit younger than me. They didn't have any work experience. I was working, and I didn't relate to them that much, except for this one guy who was really cool, Zhang Pei. And I haven't had a whole lot of male friends in China. I don't know. I've talked with other foreign friends about this. For some reason, it's kind of hard for foreign guys to make friends with Chinese men sometimes.
I think it's going to be hard for guys to make friends with guys anyways, but yes.
True. So I guess it's a double whammy. Anyway, this guy was always really cool. He had special interests. He's from Hubei, but he was always really interested in Taiwan and Taiwanese politics and stuff. And I was like, really? I'm not that interested in Taiwan myself, but he was just different. And we became friends, and he was super nice. Like, when we have to do writing assignments for a class, he would look over my papers for me and like make some corrections because, I needed some corrections. And he's since moved to Beijing, and I've visited him a couple times. Unfortunately, can't get out to Beijing very often. But yeah, he was just always selfless about helping me and just such an interesting character. My wife loves him as well. Just wish I could see him more.
That's pretty neat. I think of also another guy that says it's some business stuff. This was last year. I have a friend from Shanghai. He's an American guy. And he's like, hey, I have a friend who's looking for someone who helps people do this or that. And it was related to my business. And so I got in touch with this guy, Leo Luo. He lives down in Guangzhou. We started talking on WeChat, and he had referred me. He had his son coming out to school here in America. He's like doing some private high school, right? And based on, what we're doing, there was a facility up in Idaho that he wanted to visit that I had a relationship with. And so I set this up. And so I went and he flew in up to Idaho Falls. I drove up there. I picked him up and we went and did the visit. Now, after this visit, we had some time. We had pretty much like 12 hours before he had anywhere he needed to go. And so I had already looked into this, John. And so if you're not familiar with this area, Idaho
Nope.
Falls, it's about a 2.5-hour drive from Yellowstone.
Okay.
And if you know Yellowstone, I mean, it's world famous. You never heard of Yellowstone
Well, I've
Park?
heard of it, but never been there.
But I mean, it's super famous all around China, right?
Yeah.
So, they go Huangshi. So I took him up to Yellowstone. I said, hey, let's go. Let's do this. And he'd heard of it, but he actually didn't know too much about it. And so he was like messaging his wife and I think his aunt or uncle, while we're on the road up there. And they're kind of like, what? You're going to Yellowstone? They're all so excited. And he was like, oh, I should be more excited. We're going to Yellowstone. Anyway, so we went up there to Yellowstone. We drove around and we saw kind of the main sites. And the cool thing is, as we were driving back through Yellowstone, and mind you, we're speaking Chinese 90% of the time. I found out actually when we went and visited the facility that we were visiting that he actually spoke English, and it was actually, it was not bad, definitely communicable. But as we were driving back home through Yellowstone, it was about 6 p.m. and sunset was starting to go down. And if you know anything about wildlife, this is actually the time when they move to where they're going to go to sleep for the night. And so as we were driving through Yellowstone, sun's going down. It's like, kind of the golden hour. And so there we are. We see the buffalo. We see now some wolves walking around. We saw a black bear. We saw like some moose. We saw like all like the iconic animals that you'd expect to see at Yellowstone within like this 45-minute drive on our way outside of the park.
You saw all of them.
Yeah, pretty much. It was a pretty epic experience. And so we still stay in touch and we're working on a bunch of different business things still. But man, he still remembers. He's like, man, that when you took me to Yellowstone, that was an amazing trip.
He hasn't made any other requests for places in the U.S. to visit with you?
Grand Canyon's next, probably.
Nice. Okay, so Jared, we've told these stories. We've reminisced about all these people that we've met through Chinese or in Chinese. And I think it's fair to ask, what's the point? Like, you can make friends in any language. Learn a language, make friends. All right, so what? Why is it special to make friends in Chinese or with Chinese? Because I think it is kind of special. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it is because every story that I've shared, and I think you as well, John, is that these are stories that would not have happened, experiences we wouldn't have had if it wasn't for Chinese, because we just wouldn't have been able to have them otherwise.
Yeah, my wife has said many times that she never would have given me a chance if I didn't speak Chinese because she just didn't think it would be worth her time. And that's crazy to think because, now I've got 2 kids in this life together. But yeah, all right. So I guess it comes down to like China just being such a fascinating place with such an interesting culture. And if you don't actually speak some Chinese, you can't get that connection as deeply. You can't like have those sources, on the inside, from the countryside. You always just feel more like an outsider, right?
I think that's very valid. And, as I'm just even thinking about this, I think this answer to that question of, hey, what's the point of all this? I think that it's a question for anyone listening to these stories. What is the point for you in learning Chinese? And by learning Chinese, if you aren't having stories or some experiences that even slightly akin to what we're sharing, then, I think that that's an aspect that maybe you can lean into, that there's something that you might be missing out on, depending on what your environment is, or maybe stepping outside of yourself. Because a lot of these stories that we are sharing are happening because it's something we're actively trying to do, right?
And I think there is a special situation in China where like a lot of people have never spoken to a foreigner before because they don't really speak English or not really very usable English. And so if you're suddenly the first foreigner they've ever met who can actually speak, somewhat in Chinese, then it just creates a special moment. Like I remember a while ago, after I had first moved to Shanghai, And I was at this school for some event related to a job I had at the time. And there was this nurse, and I was waiting for some meeting, and she was having her dinner. And, we were strangers, so we had no reason to really say much to each other. But I just thought, why not? And I just started asking her all these questions about like, oh, what did you study in school? And like, how did you become a nurse? And like, do you like the job? Is it hard to become a nurse in China? Like, is there a lot of pressure on a nurse? And like, I don't think I would have asked these questions if I hadn't been a foreigner in China. And I'm not sure she would have answered these questions if I had just been, some random Chinese person. But because she hadn't had many conversations with a foreigner, and because I was so keen to learn more about China and like, different aspects of society, it all just kind of worked. And it was just so interesting and so easy.
On that note, John, I think about you shared that story of Zhang Pei, your friend in China.
Yeah.
And how he took so much interest in you and he helped you with so many things through your coursework and things, right?
Yeah.
I think about for many others that there's that opportunity for them to be that Zhang Pei to some other Chinese person, in their area.
Yeah.
And I think about that too. Right now, we have a foreign exchange student living with us from China. He goes by Harrison Huang. Anyway, but Harrison, this was interesting. We were actually kind of the second family that he was with. There was a family that had said, oh, you can come live with us. They set up through the homestay program. But when he got there, they switched up the living arrangements. And he was living in this room that was equivalent to like, Harry Potter under the stairs type of a thing. And evidently it was a bad situation. And he did not get along with the mom. And after like a week or a week and a half, they pulled him out and they had him staying with like one of the other coordinators while they were trying to find him a home. And finally he moved into our home. And I didn't realize how bad the situation was because he was really angry about it, even some months later. And when I brought it up with him, because there was some situation related to it, he started crying.
Wow.
He's like 17, 18. It's okay to cry, but I will say that, John, it's not usually an emotion we see expressed in China. You're right.
Yeah.
And I realized, and he started saying about how alone he felt. And he felt like abandoned and like nobody cared about him. And I can relate to that feeling when you go to another country and you're away from everything that you know. And this was his first time leaving China, first time in America, didn't know anyone, anything. Everything's different, right? And you're moved into the situation where you didn't expect it like this. It was bad and you don't get along with people. That's really, really hard. And it was different for obviously coming to our home. We all speak Chinese. We understand Chinese culture. We understand like the holidays. And my son, Colin, kind of took him under his arm. And Colin, he grew up in China. And so he's able to in Chinese, explain all these different cultural things to him.
And they're roughly the same age?
Yeah. So Colin is just like 2 years younger than him. But they're both high school. They're both attending high school at the same school. And so that alone has helped Harrison integrate so much better and have a much, much better experience.
Stable home life, right?
Imagine that, right? But I'm bringing that up because I even think about like how we're able to help Harrison get settled here in China, and at Zhang Pei, how he helped you get settled in. Sorry, I said we helped Harrison get settled here in the United States. And Zhang Pei helped you get through some of the coursework and things that are in China.
That's funny because I have two connections to what you were just saying, and they're both through Japanese.
Oh, really?
I was a homestay student in Japan in my sophomore year of college. And so I was Harrison in Japan.
Nice.
And then the other thing is that when I was at UF, before I came to China, I had a deal with my Japanese teacher, and I was like helping him learn English. Wasn't really a deal because he helped me a little bit with Japanese, but like I helped him a lot with English and with his papers and stuff. So I kind of did for him what Zhang Pei did for me. And I wasn't really looking for anything out of it. A little help with Japanese, but yeah, like pay it forward, help people. It's all for the best in the end, for sure.
And that's what I think is that there's a lot of these stories. I imagine everyone listens to our podcast, how many stories there are out there of people helping or being involved in someone's life. And Chinese is that common connector. And I know the thing about, like, at least in the United States, trying to help some Chinese person get settled, frankly, most of them are going to speak English pretty well.
Yeah.
But there's still that bond, and that Chinese can open that door and help you have some really neat and rich experiences.
So you're probably learning Chinese, but please do take the extra effort or the extra time to try to, make these connections, because you're definitely going to be glad that you did, and it is so worth it.
That's right. Because you can learn Chinese, but you can also make new friends.
Yes.
Was that cheesy, John?
That was cheesy.
You have been listening to the You Can Learn Chinese podcast. I'm Jared Turner, co-founder of Mandarin Companion, alongside my co-host John Passon, co-founder of Mandarin Companion, founder of All Set Learning, the Chinese Grammar Wiki, and Sinosplice.com. If you liked today's episode, hit that subscribe button, share it with a friend. You can leave us a review on iTunes. We love hearing from you. Or come connect with us at MandarinCompanion.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter for more tips, updates, and good times. You want a fun way to boost your Chinese? Hey, grab one of those Mandarin Companion Greater Readers. They're available on Amazon, Apple Books, Google Play, or wherever you get your books. Apologies to John Cena. We just ran out of time. The You Can Learn Chinese podcast is produced by myself, Jared Turner, and is edited by Jasper Chua. And of course, thanks to my co-host, the man, the myth, the legend, John Passon. See you next time.